That should
started?
give up other link. Yeah, it's still loading for you. Yeah, now we are like
Okay.
stuff.
Okay. So now the game is started. Right? All right. So about Bernstein, uh, so there is a like a very interesting history about Bernstein. You know, we can say like if you read Bernstein's life, there is a yes, there is a story of both these players have a good story related to World War II. You know, so you can say that Bernstein was a successful businessman who one considered well before losing it in the Bolshevik Revolution. Then he again earned a fortune and then he lost it again in the Great Depression. And third time he earned the fortune and he lost in Nazi Germany, like invaded France was invaded by Nazi Germany in 1940. So he three times he lost his wealth, Bernstein. And yeah, so then what happened is that bad luck. He got uh, he this Bolshevik secret police they investigated and like he was working as a legal advisor to the banking industry. So that was a crime as per them. And then he was executed, like he was on his execution, and some member of the like a commanding officer or somebody, he saw the list of prisoners, and he recognized Bernstein and that he was a chess enthusiast himself. So I don't know, like I think this is a very generous offer on that commanding officer that he made a deal. That commanding officer made a deal to this Grandmaster Bernstein that if he plays a game of chess with the commanding officer himself, then he will win his life and freedom. And Bernstein readily agreed it, and he won the game. And if he drew or he lost, then he will get shot with the rest of the prisoners. But Bernstein won it in very short order, and he was released. So I believe that that commanding officer wanted Bernstein not to be shot, and so that after that he escaped on a British ship and settled in Paris. Meises also has a very good history. So let me first save this game in a particular database. Okay, so we have name is Bernstein Osip, and black is Meises. Okay, so for Meises, he also was kind of like a Jewish person, and like Bernstein, and he was from German. Bernstein was France, Then he also escaped the Nazi Holocaust, and there was this Kristallnacht in Germany in 1938, was a program against Jews carried out by the Nazi party. So they killed people who were Jews, and Burns this Macy's arrived with only 15 Reichsmarks in his pocket when he came to England. So he started his life from scratch in England after that, and he played till a very long year. He was a good swimmer, so he was very good in health, and he when he came to England, uh, he's he once won against a 22-year opponent and securing the brilliancy prize for a game-winning attacking combination. So very aggressive player. And 3 years later, at 84, he defeated an 86-year-old master Dirk Van Forest. And then he commented that youth has become victorious because he was only 2 years younger than his opponent. So very jolly personality. Both players have a very rich history, and it will be good to see their games. We have what is his full name? Mrs. Jacques. Jacques. All right. So the tournament that we will see was Coburg 1904. So all this we set up. And yeah, so the all right. So the game started with a standard move e4. So this was played. White was Bernstein and black was Meises. And the game went to the Sicilian defense. So this is the Sicilian defense when black replies with c5. You can take the notation. No? Okay. Then uh, Bernstein replies with a closed Sicilian. So when we say closed and when we say open, so in open Sicilian, what white does is that he places a knight on f3 and then he opens the position like this, no? And that is how this is called the open Sicilian. But here he doesn't practice that, and he gives a closed Sicilian, indicating that it will be a close game. And Meises played e6, no, and Bernstein played knight to f3. So uh, there are other moves as well, but this is the most standard move. Knight f3, then knight c6. So here normal development moves are being played, but Meises could have tried this also. No, there was no problem with this, and there could have been a center control by black, in this position. So this could be a very good try against the close Sicilian. But Meises didn't play that. He played simply the knight to. Now Bernstein, who started with the close Sicilian, actually transfers into the open Sicilian by this. So the like this. So this same could have been achieved with, let's say, knight c6, d4, so knight d4, and then play c6, no? And no, like this, knight f6, knight c3, and e6. So same position could have come, no? With this one, knight d4. So, and after that, knight cut pawn. Okay, so we started with a closed Sicilian. Now we are in the back again in the open Sicilian, and Meises played knight to f6. So what I say is that this position and this position are similar, just that the order of moves are different. So that is why we are in the open Sicilian, not in the closed Sicilian. Anyway, Bernstein took the knight and Meises towards the center. He captured, and now Bernstein plays the move e5. Okay, so this is a good move that it evicts the knight from its fine outpost. The knight f6 is the ideal place for this knight, and so he tries to evict that. And also another advantage is that by this move is that he actually gives a good uh, hold on the this square d6 square. So there will be many moves by which white will target the dark squares of the position. But these are just one of the moves that are started it. So knight to d5. Just he's trying to say that I want to exchange your knight, and if you don't exchange, I will exchange your knight, and there will be double pawn. So let's say uh, black doesn't do anything, and he okay, training analysis. Is that null move? Yeah, he said a null move. So let's say he doesn't do anything, like he makes a no. Then this is the threat, knight f6, and this will be a double pawn. No, for then double pawns are not good compared to the pawns which are interlinked with each other. So that is what the threat is about. So Bernstein doesn't want to take this, but instead he wants to uh, see that this is the hole, like on d6. And why it is a hold on d6? Because there is no pawn protecting the d6 square. So if you, the pieces can come to d6, but there won't be any pawn protecting this square. So Bernstein feels that he should take advantage of it instead of taking the knight. But it's better that I put my knight here and take advantage of this fact that there is a hole on d6. Well, so now black.
But Manos, how it's basically advantage? If it goes to uh, d6, then bishop can easily take it off.
Yes, yes. So we'll take this there, So let it come. Then I will ask So let's say then black plays f5, and black plays f5. But let us say black didn't play f5, but he instead targets this pawn, from queen c7. He targets this pawn. All right. Then white could have played f4. Okay, and this could have been a good position for white. But let's say he right now, in reply to queen c7, if he does this, then what happens? That we'll see. So let's say white wants to take advantage of the fact that the queen and the knight are on the same file. Let's say after bishop takes, pawn takes, queen takes, and then now I play c4. But this won't work right now because of the check on e5. Why check on e5 and why not check on b4? Can anybody tell?
Why not on one?
See, if he wants to go outside of this, like if he moves this knight, then this queen is gone, right? So the queen has been pinned. This is the pin. He cannot move the knight right now because the knight is being pinned. If he moves the knight, then you lose the queen. Fine. So naturally you won't move the knight. You will instead move your queen with a check. All right, and this will actually enable black to move the knight to a safer place. And if you count the pawns, he has lost a pawn. All right,
Yeah,
but my question is why queen to e5 check and why not queen to b4 check?
because of bishop d2.
Because of bishop d2, right? A lower piece will attack the higher piece, and your another piece is already in attack. So let's say even if I take this pawn, but still this is gone, so he will be down material. So queen b4 will be a mistake. Even if he protects his queen some other place, then also this is coming. So that's the reason. Now white didn't place his knight immediately there, but instead now, and black also played f5, because if he had played queen c7, then there is no guarantee that white will play knight d6 because he's losing in that variation a pawn. But better to place f4 first, and solidify his position. So he didn't wanted to go that way, so he harassed the knight with f5. Now there is the en passant check. En passant, pawn takes pawn, en passant, knight takes pawn, and now he places his queen, knight to here. All right, bishop takes knight, queen takes knight. So the queen takes place instead of the knight on d6, and the exchange of the pieces. Now some pieces have been exchanged here, but here if you see this bishop, it is a bad bishop. Why? Because most of the center pawns are on the white squares and the bishop is also of the same color, so that will be like less squares for this bishop, and it will be become own effective ineffective because its pathways is cluttered by its own pawns. And So this kind of bishop is known as the bad bishop in chess parlance. Like it is like the own pawns are occupying the squares, same squares which this bishop actually expects it to open. Also, he cannot directly castle because of this queen here, which is looking at this diagonal. So see, sorry, this one, no? So it looks at this diagonal, queen d6. So it looks at this diagonal, and so that's why I cannot castle right away. I have to do some moves that to get out of this irritating diagonal that is the queen is looking towards. And last but not the least, the queen is here, and so his pawn he cannot march ahead this pawn. And this is very important for black to develop his pieces. So that's why now black plays knight to e4 first, and he challenges the queen. Now, what will happen if there is a queen to e7 first? If queen to e7, then white can still maintain the hold of this d6 square by putting a bishop. So now, if bishop takes queen, okay. And now, if I do this, again harassing the bishop, then I have bishop to rook 3, and this is also fine, and still it doesn't release the control of the d6 square and this diagonal as well. So this was the option, but Meises chose to why not play directly knight to e5 and take out the queen from this square. So he went here. Meises went back again because his this pawn was in attack now. This pawn, so he went back again. Bernstein went back again, and Meises came back again. So now, if we again do this, it will be a draw, like repetition. 3 moves, the game position is repeated, then it's a draw. So Bernstein has to find some other way to maintain the pressure here. So now, first question to both of you, Parag and Nekshan. What should
Yeah.
Bernstein play here? Right, I will give 3 minutes. Yes, Parag.
No, I'm just thinking.
We can push his knight back, maybe.
Okay, so should I move this move? This move?
By either bishop d3 or developing move or queen d4 as well.
Okay, bishop
Anyways,
d3 loses because your queen is under attack next time. Now you will lose your queen.
yeah, sorry, queen d4 first.
Queen d4, then once your Meises
B,
will
B, 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 not
B.
D, B,
Okay,
B.
so Parag, he votes for queen b4. What is your vote?
Mm,
Like, vote for BJP, vote for Congress, vote for queen b4.
uh, I would move it to say uh, F, not F, but this one G. Yeah. Uh, no, not there. F4.
F4. Fine. So two moves are there. Fine. But yeah, Bernstein moved to Queen to B4. I will tell you what are the advantages. First of all,
Okay.
this move attacks the knight. This move also attacks here. Fine. Also, uh, this move doesn't allow the queen's rook to develop at this square. You know? So it stops that development as well. So it is like three birds in one stone. Right.
Okay.
So F4 is a good move, but again, like he might have the might be he plays D5 next. No, he doesn't play. He has knight to B3. He goes back again. Knight B3. Fine. No, no, he does play D5. Knight B3 he played last move. So now he plays D5. Yeah. So yeah, this is the main line. He plays D5. Right. So now it looks like black has achieved some kind of equality. Right. And now he intends like black can try to play the queen here and try to shoo away this queen from this diagonal by offering an exchange. So he can try that. Now Bernstein played the move which Nexan proposed in 2021, like bishop d3. You know? So what is the threat here with bishop d3? This is a good developing move plus comes with a threat.
Attack.
It attacks the pawn. So let's say we enter a null move here and we take and he wins a pawn. So that is the simple threat. I will win a pawn. But Meises says that you cannot win a pawn because I put the queen here, no, queen queen exchange. Because if you take here, then I will simply take your queen, check, and so Bernstein naturally won't do that. So queen to d6 was played, directly challenging the queen. Bernstein chooses to exchange the queen. So white is happy to exchange. Why? Because he has the power of two bishops. He is a bishop pair, which black doesn't have a bishop pair. His bishop pair already gone lost in uh, dealing with this knight. He lost his bishop pair. So that's the reason he takes this. So where were we? Bishop d3, queen d6. Yeah, this was the main variation. Queen d6. Okay, fine. Queen d6, queen d6. So this was the main variation. Queen d6, knight d6. So here we were on move number 16th. And black is also okay with it because he had so much pressure on his d6 and now he feels a bit relieved of that pressure and he has some open files like he can put his rook here maybe on which to operate, and there is some cluster of pawns in the center. If you see, white doesn't have any pawns in the center, so why black also should be happy with this position. And he believes that although my pawns are all on white squares, but white also has a bad bishop, like white also has a bishop which he might like these pawns may limit the scope of that bishop, all of my pawns which are on light squares. So that was his reasoning. All right, so now Parag and Nekshan, tell me which move is Bernstein going to play here, which is also a very simple move and more forcing on the dark squares.
Mm,
Anyone going ahead?
Maybe bishop f4
Okay,
or e3, any.
okay,
We
Parag.
need to develop it eventually.
Yeah, Parag, you.
Mm, FC.
F,
Sorry. C. I mean
C,
C1 to F.
C1 to F4.
Yeah.
Okay, so you both guys say bishop F4. This is also a good move. But Bernstein had a thing that I understand that you want to create some pressure on these dark squares, two dark squares here. The reason these dark squares are weak is because there is no pawn to guard them. Plus the blacks, this dark square bishop is gone, like exchange. So maybe that's the reason you want that. And Bernstein actually thinks that this e5 square can be we can stop black from playing e5. The once plays e5, then is this bishop is having the diagonal, so he wants to stop that play. So he plays f4. His other bishop will go to e3, and he will take care of this dark square. So at present d6 is not the question, but taking hold of this square and this square, that is the priority for Bernstein. So he places that, and so this prevents e5, and it also prevents the release of the light squared bishop of black. All right, so Meises thinks that if I am not allowed to bring the bishop here, let me bring out the bishop from this side. So he plays a5. Now the reason of playing a5 is that he wants to develop the bishop here, and so that he can directly exchange the bishop. Fine. Now what did Bernstein played? Another excellent move he played to make more control on the dark squares. What should he be his move? Parag?
Moving pawn from C2 to C4 so
Okay,
that the sort of defense that is created can be eliminated.
all right. You can, but there this will come then.
Yeah, then you can go take
A5.
uh, yeah, d5.
Then I will take your bishop.
Yeah, but bishop would be sacrificed for sure, but still you can eliminate the complete defense.
All right.
So
Parag is a very aggressive player. Okay, but let's say there are better move than c4. Then simple move, developing move. He played for bishop to e3. Controlling this square as well, so that black cannot play c5 also, and he cannot play e5 also. So complete control of these two squares was attempted. Yeah. And also he cannot play this also. So this and this, all three squares are now under white's control. Anyway, black went on with his plan, bishop to a6, and now Bernstein played another very powerful move. And what should it be?
exchanging bishops because then there wouldn't be any bishop on the other side.
Right. So he did want to exchange, no problem with that. But he also wants that his king should be developed. So first he says that you exchange it if you want. So he plays bishop, king to d2. Okay, so the king is a strong place, and in the end game you can use your king aggressively. In the middle game, in the opening, you should not use your king aggressively because there are too many pieces like queen, especially the queen. If the queen is there on the board, you have to wait, and like if you see there are only one pair of minor piece, the other pair is gone, and now the rooks are there. So this is more of an end game phase. So that's the reason that there are less chances of a mating attack on the king, and you can use your king in a like a better manner in the end game. So he plays this.
But one thing, one can also argue that instead of moving king, if rook is moved from a1 to d1, then also we would still be keeping like king
Yes,
at the.
we can do that, but yeah, rook may not be like d1 may not be the ideal square for the king in this rook. The ideal square for this rook may be e1. Yeah? This eyeing especially this backward pawn on e6. Okay, so that's the reason also that Bernstein played, so that the
Okay.
king d2 also connects both of his rooks, no?
Mm-hmm.
And then he can put more pressure here on this file where there is a
Right.
backward pawn. Now,
Mm-hmm.
why this is backward is that there is no pawn supporting this, and he cannot also move ahead, so we can put more pressure on this pawn in future, not now, maybe in future.
Right.
So
Right.
Bernstein thought these things, and he also connected his uh, rooks. Now, Black, as you know, I had explained the biography of these two players, and Meises is an attacking player, you know. So here, Meises thinks about some plan, to trap White. He wants to force an exchange of the knight for bishops. Let's say uh, we have this knight to check, and we have an exchange here. So what will be happening is that we will have opposing colored bishops. Okay, in opposite color bishops, the chances of draw are even more because they are opposites. Like this will connect, this will take hold of all the dark squares, and this will take hold of the light squares. So that was the plan of Meises. Another plan was that he was hoping for some small swindle. You know, let's say he doesn't take any places the king here. Okay, then he can take knight takes bishop. And then uh, the the bishop which was very powerful, on these dark squares, he can exchange it for his knight and be done away with it. Also, White in playing king to e2 also have one thing in mind, like he knows that his b2 pawn is hanging. Still, he allows black to take his b2 pawn. So, what should be the problem? Like, what if a pawn is being taken? Then what is the problem that can be faced by black? Can anyone explain?
Mm.
How should white reply to this?
Rook can directly point to b1.
or bishop d4.
Yeah, first bishop takes bishop, rook takes bishop. Now attack the knight. Now he cannot come and prevent, like protect his knight because of this diagonal that the bishop is eyeing. So he cannot come here. So let's say he goes here. Then he can place rook check, and this is a skewer. This rook is gone. Fine. So that is the problem. Like bishop takes bishop, he is forced to take, attacks the knight, and either he has to then sacrifice his knight and take out the king from here, or if he tries to save the knight, then he loses his rook. So this was the uh, like how white could have done. No? But Bernstein doesn't do anything like that. He doesn't play king to e2. No, there was this line which was interesting, but he didn't play that. He actually went for the exchange, and black also turns for the exchange. So black got what he wanted. No problem with that. But white also was aiming for something, not very tactical, but entirely positional thing. If you see, this pawn is advanced to a5, and it's a pawn on a dark square. So this bishop can anytime harass this pawn. No, so Bernstein first played a4, fixing the pawn on the dark square. So the blocks the pawn. Okay, the rook pawn is stopped dead at its tracks. He cannot move ahead. The rook pawn cannot move ahead, and it can be a fixed target. Like anyway, it will attack this anytime. In future. So all these things are like future planning. Of Bernstein. So black must watch over the pawn continuously with his queen rook. So that is also a liability, because if he moves his rook away, then this bishop will always come and threaten to take this pawn. So that is also a liability, that this pawn will be a liability for black. So this rook will be in service of this pawn, and his service, if it is required on other side of the board, it will be very difficult to obtain that service because it is trying to protect this pawn. Normally, we should have a situation where a rook is being protected by a pawn, but that is a good situation, that a pawn is protecting my rook. But this situation is bad, that a rook is protecting the pawn. No? So black also connects his rooks, you know, in the similar fashion how Bernstein connected his rooks. So it also comes to the center of the endgame. Like for endgame, it must be at the near to the center. Any king must be near to the center. And now, what is planned is that he should come here in the next move, so that he can play this move. No? And like maybe in future also play some rook here and try to get this move also. So this is plan. Like he doesn't have a dark square bishop, he doesn't have knights, but maybe the king can help to get these pawns cross over this dark squares, which is being vehemently protected by this pawn, this bishop here on e3, this very powerful bishop. Anyway, so Bernstein further limits the bishop's scope. Now he says that you cannot come to the center, go back. So he goes back because there is no other move to go back. So the only flight square open was bishop to a6. Now Bernstein plays this move, bishop to b6. So attacking the pawn, right? So Meises played this move, and now Meises thinks that if I am not, like, he doesn't fancy this square because no use, like there is no scope in this square, like there are two pawns here. So what I should do is actually take this route and come here in the game. So this is what Meises is thinking when he plays bishop c8. So he wants come back in the game. This bishop should come back into the game because he's been severely tied down, this bishop. So he thinks about creative ways to be back in the game. Also this move also protects the pawn. Like if you play bishop c8, then this rook is there to protect the pawn, which is being threatened by this bishop. All right. So uh, Bernstein now brings the king more closer to the center. He places the king closer to the center, like all these pawns, q4, uh, and yeah. See, this is where he can go. He can go here. He can go here. The king can go here. So all these squares are for his taking. And in this game, he actually prefers this route, to come here and to put further pressure on e6. So we'll see how. So he first places this, and now black is threatening to play maybe queen q3. Then Bernstein will again put the king here, and still he cannot play neither e5 or c5. He cannot play because now the bishop and king both are protecting the squares. So that's the reason he played this move, king to e3. So Meises played bishop to a6. So now, next Shan, what will you play? And Parag, what will you play? Hello,
Yeah,
Aji
move
thinking,
bishop from
thinking.
you
6.
guys are there in the call, huh? Very shant, you guys are.
Yeah, yeah, we are.
Like you are like
Move,
mesmerized with the play of Bernstein, huh? I think, like
move b6.
yeah, b6 to
I mean, defend b6. So move b6 to d4.
d4, right? But d4 has a disadvantage that the king can come up
D6.
to d6. Yeah, he can come to d6, right? So what will you play to prevent that?
C5. Bishop C5.
c5. Simple move. He
Okay.
just stops the king from coming there.
Mhm.
So now you can say Bernstein took control of d4, he control of c5, control of e5, and now finally the control of d6 as well. Now the black king cannot reach to d6. His rooks cannot seize any open file. Okay, there are no open files for his rook. Maybe this is there, but he cannot put his rook here now because now even the f8 is being controlled by this bishop. See, such a powerful bishop. You should frame this bishop and hang it on the wall. The painting. It's a very powerful bishop. So his own bishop has very little scope. Where to go? This bishop. So if you count the number of squares, how many squares are this? One square. You can go to one square. But here you can say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 squares. Right? 8 square, he has, he may not go to each and every square, but at least this bishop is eyeing at around 8 squares. The putting some kind of influence on those 8 squares, whereas this bishop is only one move, the legal move. Bishop to b7. Very bad issue. Anyway, Messi's went here. So this is actually strategically a won game by White. Strategically is winning, but now he has to prove that actually this is a win game by converting his winning advantage into some material advantage. You know, like all these squares and those things are correct, but unless you don't win material or you don't give checkmate to the king, this game is still not won. Okay, so if you are Bernstein, what will you do further to enhance your control of dark squares? What will you do further?
I think rook should now come out. So
Yeah, rook can come out, but there is still one last screw to be, tightened.
I can
Right.
still see
So
that if we can
you
just
can
break
see
the.
that the rooks can come out to this file, right? It will directly influence this file. So Bernstein actually played king to d4 first, so that this king can actually put more control on this. So he cannot attempt to play e5 at all, and
Mm.
this is like more two pieces are now defending the e5 square. So he places king to d4. So he cannot move any of the pawns. See, if the center pawns you see, he cannot move this pawn, he cannot move this pawn, he cannot move this pawn, he cannot move this pawn as well. So all the center pawns are paralyzed, you can say. And now the next move the rooks can come. So Meises continues with his plan. Like as you see, the king got out of the way of the bishop so that he can come here, the bishop to d6, and then maybe get settled on f5. That could be his plan. So he continues with his plan. After king d4, he places bishop d7. So so that is his plan to go to bishop to g6, and like his this square, this rook, has some way to go. Like he can put here, or he can put here. But if you put it here, like a semi-open file is there, but still there is no future on b file. So maybe like he has to decide where to put this rook. You know. So okay. So now you are Bernstein. What will you play?
We can bring the rook now, right?
Yeah. Let's bring the rooks. Rook e1. All right. So now black thinks that he should be like instead of moving rook to some place where he doesn't have scope, because this doesn't have scope because of this bishop. Maybe he can try this, but he places his pawn here, on d5. Like he intends to further thing. Another thing is that he wants to prevent this in this move. So let's say Bernstein tries this. Then he can put the pawn here so that Bernstein doesn't put the rook here, and attack this pawn. But Bernstein doesn't play rook to e3. Instead, he goes for rook to e5. Now he intends to participate this rook via g5 from g5, square, and directly attacking this pawn. So Meises will make a stronghold here on the g6. He will try to defend this g6 weak pawn with the rook on g8. It looks like that. Once let's see what white plays now. So what should white play here? Let me save the name. Yeah. Nikshan.
Uh, Either put the pressure on g6 pawn, or you can bring another rook up.
Yeah. So Parag, what is your opinion? Put pressure on the g6 pawn.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what Bernstein actually did. He played rook to g5. And now there are two ways to prevent black from taking it. Like there is a third way also, like putting this bishop here, and but this is also coming after that. So like Bernstein thinks that sorry, Mrs. thought that let me defend it from here. There is no point in defending it from here because the dark squares are already weak. Uh, King can come any time here, and harass the rook even further. So why not we? take here, you know, rook to g8. So Bernstein further, just blocks the position. He is intending to come to f6, and then bring his other rook here. So first he wants to cross over that king. So let's say what is his threat? Let's say what is his threat. So we are enter null move and just to see what white is threatening. So let's say he plays king to f5, and let's say now if I place king to f5, then I have to get like if I want to save my g6 pawn and after that the h5 pawn. So I may have to let go of e6 pawn, and I want to place here to bishop to e8. Now I can put here, so this is even stronger than king takes pawn directly. Like just develop one more piece, okay, and then you can take this pawn now, and that will be full win for white. So that is what he threatens to come to this bishop to king to f6. So here uh, black gives up his pawn, right? Now there is one thinking behind that giving the pawn. No? He abandons the pawn, but as there is no hope to save all the pawns, like he cannot save both of these pawns, and king f6 is coming, so there is a thing, so but now let's say if white has taken the pawn, he doesn't take, he places rook to e1, next move. But let's say if he had taken the pawn, then he could have played bishop to d7. Now back again this, and now he could have developed the bishop at a proper place. He is just a pawn down, and this could have been still a good position for black to play, so that's the reason black black didn't play directly, white didn't play directly king to e6 because of this check and the activation of the black bishop. Instead of taking the pawn, he further developed his rook. So as you see, white doesn't want to simplify the position in such a manner as it could give black even a slightest of chances. Black is a very aggressive player, but if given a chance, he will pounce upon you. But white is playing like a judo. He doesn't want that like a cobra grip. He doesn't want black to come out of that grip. Now, if you count the pawns, one, two, three, four, five. 5 pawns are standing on the same color as the black's bishop. This dark, light squared bishop should be standing on, like white bishop. So now it Bernstein develops his last rook. He knows that this pawn is for taking. There is nothing to prevent that, and either this pawn will fall or this pawn will fall. It is okay for him. So let me develop my last piece into the attack, and that is how a master or a good player, a good chess player should be playing. He should be putting all his pieces into the attack and then make some any uh, decisive action in the center. Okay. All right. So now Meises also does the same. He wants the rook to come back. So now, if you remember, Meises had put this bishop, like to attack the bishop, he had came here, and how this piece was misplaced. It was not doing anything here. So strategically, this move was not that good. But now he's correcting that mistake, and he's coming back, and maybe it will also help protect, like connect these two rooks with each other. All right. But let's say if he had played any other move, like protecting this pawn. why not? Like I protect my pawn. Yeah. Then also Bernstein had king to f6, and still this pawn cannot be protected. You cannot play this because this will lose the bishop, and there is no way to protect the pawn. So that's the reason uh, it's better like to forget about this pawn and activate some of the pieces which are not activated. All right, now if you are white, what will you play? Final touch,
Mm,
Nikshan.
the weakness you pointed out, maybe that king goes to f6.
Yeah. So the king goes to f6 comfortably. So it says that okay, I will not take with my king because anyway, if I take with my king, you are going to put your bishop on f5, which I don't want. So he just places for king f6. So now like all the circlement that we did, like we there was this king here, and we put it like this. Then we went here. So now this journey is completed. The king has reached to his destination. While there's like not even leaving an inch of black squares. Like the black squares are firmly in white's control. And these black squares, which cannot be protected by a pawn or a piece or anything, like it, for most importantly, it cannot be protected by a pawn, any of the black squares. So those are called holes in the position, and that is what white actually took advantage of. It it came all this way because of this hole in the black's position. So that is how white was able to take advantage of it. There was no brutal attack or complication, just simple chess, just taking advantage of this hole and coming inside one step at a time. Okay, so now Meises played bishop to d7. Right? Should white take the rook cut g6 or not?
Should white? Sorry, your voice cracked for me.
Okay, am I audible? Like
Yes,
my
yes.
voice is coming low or high?
No, it's perfect. It's just
Okay,
my internet. It drops
okay.
in between.
So here, what is wrong with rook at g6, or is it right to play rook at g6 and earn at least a pawn for all our efforts? Like if you see, our pawn count is still equal. Like even though I have so much pressure on their position, a pawn count is still equal. But yeah, I cannot
We
play
won't
this one because of
gain.
this.
I,
Yeah.
I don't think so. We will gain a pawn because if we go rook cut pawn, rook cut rook, king cut rook, and then rook a, g8 will come and we will lose our g2 pawn.
Right. So this is can happen. Like then we take this like this, and suddenly like
Two pawns of are under attack and rooks on
yeah,
7th rank for white. So not
right.
a good idea.
Not a good idea, right? So this will lose the grip of the position if we take the pawn right now. All right. So what should be playing then? No.
We can also use the rook from uh, e1
Hmm.
and take the pawn, because then there would be exchange. But in those exchanges, uh, the position of black would be quite like weaken out. That's how I see it.
Okay, you want to give up an exchange.
Yeah. So if you do that, then it would be left with only two rooks, and we would have a rook as well as a bishop. So we will basically weaken up their position.
Okay. Hmm. So let's say like rook takes pawn, fine. I takes bishop, then king a6. So this rook will come now.
No, now you
Let's
can
say
easily
if I
move
put
to,
here,
yeah, exactly.
yeah,
So if they move any of the
uh,
thing, one would go, one rook would go off. King can easily take another one, right? Ah, no, no, it can't take. So,
yeah, can
but king can move at this
I
position
think
to say,
h4 maybe. Yeah, this is also fine. Like we can give, and there is a small like advantage here, but like it's like there is even a more simpler win, no, than this. Uh, this is a bit complication. Like you are inviting complication into the opening where you shouldn't. This game. It is a very simple game. So it can happen like you will win, but with lot of struggles. Like then you will have to deal with these two rooks and the thing. So there will be some struggle here, but we don't want struggle here. We want to win simply. So this is bad, as Nixon pointed out, because rook take g6, rook take g6, and then this skewer comes and this pawn goes away. You know, so how to prevent that?
by moving a pawn from,
Yeah, that's
uh,
it. G3. Just so we don't. We have all the time in the world. Why to like hurry? We place G3 and then we take the pawn, right? So now black protects whatever he has. Okay, and so what he intends is that let me play this move, maybe and get my this uh, bishop to some use. But now black white also makes a good move. So what is that? So one thing is that he has this move. Should he now do because he has played already g3, or he should play some more tightening move where he cannot
even
free his position?
king can move one step ahead at 7.
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is also a good move. Yeah, pointed by Parag. This is also good move. This is a good move. There is one more move which Bernstein played, which is that move. Because see, this is the one position, so there will be many good moves here. But yeah, there is even more better move, like giving no possibility of counterplay to black.
Well, the pawn from f4 can move one step ahead, so
You
that
you
either
are
of the pawn from black would go off,
yeah,
and then
but you
it
are
would open up for
opening the
rook.
position. I don't want you to open the position. If you open the position, this bishop will have more scope. Right now, do not open the position. Let's keep it closed. So
We can now
yeah,
grab the pawn.
no,
Maybe.
he played this move. He doesn't want black to come out of here. He just blocks everything. So this is like blocking and then hitting. It is more of that like. So now it is impossible for black to get freed, and none of his pawns can move now. If there are two pawns which can move, but that will lose the pawn. Like he can move here, but that will lose the pawn. He can move here, but that will also lose the pawn. So none of the pawns can move. Other pawns are just dead in their tracks. All right. So black sees that there is no scope to uh, save this pawn, so he gives up it, and he doesn't want also that an exchange happens with the rooks, because if the exchange happens, then with less pieces and less pawns he will be going for an inferior endgame. So he doesn't want that. So white takes the pawn, and now black plays rook to h7. Alright, so preventing him to go here. No, so he prevents the king to come here, and white actually occupies the seventh rank. Like he is now gaining ground on the seventh rank. The rook always belongs to the seventh rank. So he offers an exchange because now he's a pawn up. So he offers an exchange to that. Black doesn't want the exchange, so he places the king to king rook one. So this rook to h8, and white goes for the exchange. Black also takes the exchange. So that is the simplest way to win. Like keep on exchanging because you are a pawn up, so it will be best for you. Also on the king side there is a 3-1 majority, and there is one pawn here. No, so let's see. So now this one brings to an important concept. Like when we are ahead in material, like the prescribed strategy is to exchange as many pieces as possible, but not the pawns. And you have to strive to make the position as only the pawns are remaining on the board. If only the pawns are remaining, then this is a win position for you. So that is what you should be aiming for. Now white gives this move, get black goes back. Now this move also threatens the rook and the pawn, so naturally the rook also wants to secure, like doesn't want the black king, white king to take the pawn. Plus he also wants to save himself, so he goes back, accomplishing both the objectives. But now another question: what should be the white's move now? Like this pawn, can it be defended? Like can it be taken, or how it is? Next, Shan Parag, can you take rook takes pawn and be two pawns up?
It can be taken, but if it's taken, then mostly it would go into draw.
Okay, it can be taken. Yeah, technically it can be taken, but should you take if you are a Bernstein, you are in a winning position? Should you go
No,
and take?
no,
What
because then
What
it
is the
can go
problem?
into draw.
What is the problem? How it will go to a draw?
There would be exchange of rooks.
No, there is one more move here. If you observe closely,
E8.
yeah, check.
Mm,
Now you have to do something about the check, and this check is also eyeing this rook. This rook is
ah,
also eyeing this rook. This rook is gone.
okay, that would be disadvantage. Fine.
Yeah, that will be losing if you take this pawn now. No, many games have been lost. Like one games have been lost because of this mistakes. And if you see, we are on move number 38. So this might be like every time control is at till move 40. So it is assumed that Meises was playing for some kind of a little trick here, so that if Bernstein takes this pawn, he will give a check, but Bernstein doesn't fall for it. Anyway, so what did Bernstein play in this position instead?
Force the rook out and then take the pawn.
Pardon? What should I do?
Force the rook out, then we can go for the pawn.
Okay, how will I put
Uh,
the rook out?
King g7.
Okay, so yeah. Please vacate the premises. Yeah, no, come out of here. My rook is already eyeing this pawn, and now the king is no longer on this diagonal. So next move I can take once the rook moves out. So the rook comes here. He doesn't want to come here because he has some plans of going here. No, the bishop. Otherwise, where will the bishop go if he comes here? So he comes here, and Bernstein takes the pawn. So now 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He's 2 pawns up.
Manos, just to mention that I would need to log off in max 5 minutes.
All right. So we take speedily. Like he plays bishop to e8. Fine. And Bernstein plays rook to h7. So now he's securing the seventh rank of black. So and Messi's played this move. Like okay, so if he had not played this move, let's say what was the threat that white was doing? Like he could have played king b6. Okay, and if I had protected this pawn from my bishop, I could have just played my other pawn and I would have just raced with my these 2 pawns. So that's the reason he wanted to exchange. So king rook 6. So he has to forcibly exchange because these two are on the same file. So king rook takes rook, king takes rook. Okay, and now Bernstein, like Meises, finally has some air for his bishop. Finally the bishop is free. What the second, like he wants to, like take these pawns. No, that is his intention. No, so the bishop is free at last. Some flicker of hope. H4. So now those these pawns cannot be rescued. If you want to rescue, you should not, and you should instead focus on your advantage in the position, which are these pawns. Now he goes here and like threatening to take the pawn. So here, if you see, there are 2 pawns here. So let me keep 1 pawn for reserve. Like let him take these 2 other pawns. So he takes this so that he cannot directly challenge it here because of this. So he takes the pawn, bishop takes pawn, g4, and he now rushes like there. Like to so because black is white is threatening to win. Let's say if he had taken one more pawn, what could have happened? So he could have taken pawn to b5. Now he could have like put a pin because now I cannot move my pawn here. No? So there was one trick like that. So now let me put some more. But now the problem is that this pawn cannot be stopped. No? And this will also win. But let's say after this, if I now instead of bishop c2 pinning that, I move my king further, then I have this move f6 because now my pawn is no longer pinned. So I can put this and I can win very easily here in this variation. So that's the reason. Uh, Now this is the main line. So king d7, and now these pawns are moving forward. Now finally desperation, like he gives up a pawn so that his king can be activated. Like this, then I will put this, and I will try to come here. So that is his logic. Let's say if he doesn't do that and plays on a normal move like this one, then also I have knight 6, g6, and let's say I pin this pawn here, then I have one more pawn going forward. Let's say I develop this bishop
Why is he not resigning?
and I can just stay now. this is unstoppable. So that's why, let's say let's go with the move that he played. No? Now I don't need to take the pawn. I just move at this pawn. So now I have three passers, not one. Uh, I take this pawn. Okay, okay. Let's say if I try to pin this once again. No, I try to pin this. Then what happens? Then I take this pawn, this, and I again rush with this thing. So this is also winning. Okay, so bishop takes a4, and now f6. You know, and here Meises resigns. You know, so next time he listened to your play that he's resigning. So king e8, and if king e8 to stop the f7, then you can play king to g7, and then you can like that is this bishop cannot stop the f7. No, so it's already out. Like if fetching these pawns, it didn't had to take this. Anyway, these pawns were unstoppable. So here Bernstein won the game, and this was a beautiful game played by Bernstein. Yeah, next one I need to stop the stream
Yeah,
and stream. Should I put end here or here? End here, right?
both, 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 both.
Okay, end.